Good evening, everyone, and welcome to CancerBuddy Conversations. And I'm excited to introduce our wonderful patients tonight who are going to talk about, let me add, let me see, I'm going to add, or maybe she's joining now. Mailie. Let's see. Okay. I'm trying to add her. Oh, here. Okay. So Mailie and Daniel Medina are joining us this evening to talk about their experience. Here they are.
Hello. Hey, Christina.
Hi. So that was actually smoother than it's been before to get on to Instagram
Perfect.
Live. Gosh, it's always a little bit nerve-wracking at first to see like where you can find the person.
Yeah, make sure it connects.
Exactly. So welcome to Cancer Buddy Conversations. And I'm excited to talk with you just about your experience, and you can tell us a little bit about um, how you dealt with a cancer diagnosis and your relationship and parenting and being a professional and also an athlete and all of everything that goes along with living life and also being thrown into a experience that you weren't prepared for. If you could just introduce, who you are and, when you were diagnosed and just give us a little bit of background, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, so we are Daniel and Mailie Medina. We have been married for 14 years. We have a 6-year-old daughter. Um, I own a cafe, and Daniel works as a project manager right now. At the time of diagnosis, which was 2021, our daughter was 3. I owned my cafe, and he worked for a biotech company. And we were young and just trying to enjoy, our family and figuring out life as newer parents and things like that. And then we're kind of thrown this whirlwind of life, being diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia was my diagnosis. And 3 years later, here we are, and we're trying to share our message and our story with people who may be going through something similar, because it can be a tough and lonely road.
Yes, it definitely can. And that's how I've met you actually, is on through Cancer Buddy, our new peer support app that connects people. And so I wouldn't know you if it wasn't for the app. So I'm grateful for that. And tell me a little bit how you, found the app during this time and so forth.
Yeah, so when we were initially diagnosed, she had gone through a 7-in-3 treatment to achieve remission. And then about a year later, we saw the signs of relapse coming. Her mutations came back, and so we knew it was imminent. So we went down the road for bone marrow transplant, and it was in that center at the UC Health Hospital over here in Colorado. I saw a flyer for CancerBuddy while she was getting her blood work done and things like that. And I hopped on, created an account, and just immediately was asking people, we're going through this bone marrow transplant. This isn't something I'm familiar with. It seems like kind of scary. How can I best support her in this time? And so there were other folks on the app already who had been through a similar experience. And I got some tidbits and tips and tricks on what they had experienced and what was really helpful to them, and a little bit of what I could look forward to, because at this point in the diagnosis, we were a year in and we had already gone through everything to achieve remission. And at the time, I would just search on the internet, how the treatments would go and what to expect and this and that. And Google is not the most optimistic resource to consult when you're looking at health related things, especially. But on CancerBuddy, being able to talk to people who had actually gone through something that Mailie was about to go through, it was an excellent resource, and it prepared me mentally, and very grateful for finding the app at that time in our lives.
That's great to hear. I mean, that's our goal, is to be able to connect people so they don't feel so alone through this experience that they're going through, and to be connected to resources and people that can help, kind of lift them up and keep them, staying focused and positive. So I'm glad that you guys found CancerBuddy. And during that time, finding support through CancerBuddy, but obviously through your own family and friends and your community, how did you ask for help, or how did people kind of rally around you to help you?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of notoriously am not the best at asking for help. And this is one of those situations that I mean, it's so big and overwhelming. And so we kind of both just said to each other, first thing, like, we have to have help. We have a small child. I had a business, I have a business that I had to run. And so our friends and family, I mean, we're just phenomenal. I had a good friend that set up like a meal train and helped having people drop off meals to our home. When I was initially diagnosed, I was immediately put on the oncology floor and in hospital for a month for my initial treatment. And so just knowing that Daniel and Piper were kind of taken care of a little bit when I couldn't be there, things like that. And then, of course, our family's helping with Piper, and things like that was just so huge to make things more manageable.
Yeah, and that must have been so, I can't even imagine like how difficult that is as a mom, because you want to be so hands-on and in the day to day, and you probably felt so kind of helpless that you couldn't be there, and you had to just really focus on yourself and getting through this. Um,
Yeah, it was tough. And on the oncology floor, they don't allow kids under a certain age too. So even then, it was like we couldn't even see. But thank goodness for FaceTime.
yeah,
We were able to talk a lot and keep connected that way, and do as much as we could. And I think that's like such an important thing, is just to stay connected with people in your lives. Like, life doesn't stop because you have cancer, it continues on, and it's just so important to keep those connections and try to keep some sort of normalcy if you can.
yeah, and I bet that was really tough for you, Daniel, and that you have tried to take care of Piper and also Mailie at the same time, and be kind of split between two. And you obviously had to be very careful in terms of just exposing Mailie to anything as well. So that was probably really tough as for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with a 3-year-old. So like with her being immunocompromised, and a toddler more or less being petri dishes, just getting sick constantly. It's splitting my time between taking care of our daughter and then also seeing Mailie. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And this was during COVID as well, on the
Wow.
tail end of that. So I think the hardest part for Mailie is not getting that face to face, in person time with our daughter.
Yeah.
Like she said, thank goodness for FaceTime and stuff like that. But pretty soon after she was diagnosed, we had a conversation about, how we wanted life to be in that moment. Obviously, it was changing, and we both agreed that we wanted to keep everything as normal as possible for our daughter. And so recruiting the help of family, friends. She's one to suffer in silence. I need support in a lot of it, so I immediately just text all my friends and said, "Hey, listen, this is what's going on." Just a simple text message here or there can go a long way. Things like that, and I think just being vulnerable and open.
Yeah.
It's difficult to do. It takes a certain kind of bravery and strength, but being vulnerable and honest with yourself about what you need, and for me, it was taking care of myself so I could show up better for Mailie and whatever she needed, as well as our daughter when I had that time, and navigating that road.
Yeah, that's really amazing that I don't know if you had somebody help you get to that kind of awareness, because it's so important to take care of yourself as a caregiver in order to give yourself to your loved one who you're caring for. Because if you don't take the time out to exercise or do the things that you need to do, you're just won't be any good to anybody in your life, especially the person you're trying to care for. So that's really remarkable that you were able to do that, and also ask for help. A lot of men, I would have to say, probably more than women usually. So it's kind of the roles are reversed for the two of you. Have more trouble asking for support and help than the women usually. But that's really great that you were able to do that. And if you could, share like, what you think is also Mailie, you were at a hospital in your hometown.
Yeah.
So you had your friends and family, and there are a lot of patients that have to go a good distance to find the right treatment for themselves, and that makes it even more difficult because then the caregiver and the patient are really isolated.
Yeah.
But just you at home and having to kind of juggle everything, Daniel. As a caregiver, like what would you kind of share with another caregiver besides being vulnerable and taking care of yourself, and asking for help? But did anybody ever kind of like step in and support Mailie while you were more with Piper, or just taking time out on your own? Like, how did that feel for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy to kind of spiral into a feeling of overwhelm for sure. But for me, reminding myself that you can only do one thing at a time was big. Um, I always wanted someone to be there with Mailie at the hospital, so fortunately we had lots of friends who were able to spend the day and spend time with her. If I was out with Piper, for instance, if I could not be at the hospital, sort of thing. And then, like Mailie said, we had meal train, we had friends and family taking care of these basic things in our life that really allowed me to be present for both Mailie, myself, Piper, whoever needed it at the time. So just trying to stay grounded, avoiding overwhelm, prioritizing, I can only do so much. And at the end of the day, just being okay with what you got done, being grateful for what you were able to accomplish instead of thinking about there's X amount of things on my to-do list, sort of
Yes.
thing. So just really reframing things to, I guess you're in survive mode instead of thrive mode, and being okay with that.
Yeah, that's great advice. And for you, Mailie, in terms of like being a mom and being a patient and also being a business owner, how did you manage your trying to just stay focused on being really a patient and at that moment and in that place?
Yeah. Having other things to distract me actually was probably good for me. It allowed me, I definitely, was focused on getting better, and that was, no question in my mind. I was like, we're going through this and we're going to make it out and whatnot. But yeah, fortunately, I have amazing employees at my shop that I own. And so I was able, to lean on them. And again, I'm just like not normally the person that asks for help. And it was just one of those times that I was stuck in a hospital for about 30 days and I had no other option. And just really leaning on those people and saying, hey, like, here's what's happening. I need whatever you can help me with, sort of thing. And so that's kind of what I did as far as, and just, kept myself in touch with those people, and, asking for help is really where I went with it. And then just was able to focus because other people were taking those things off my plate, was able to like focus on healing and resting and doing what I could to get better.
All right. So I think the really important message here is really to ask for help.
Yeah,
and ask
absolutely.
other people.
Yeah.
So many people don't. They either sometimes don't even share that they're sick.
Yeah.
And it's such a huge mistake to kind of keep that quiet and not ask for help.
Yeah.
And in terms of getting through that, and you were in the hospital for your bone marrow transplant. For how long were you in the hospital for that treatment?
That was another month, about a month time frame. So yeah, I did, my initial treatment was a month, and then I had, 4 follow-ups that were like a week long. So another month, and then the BMT ended up being, a full another month. So a lot of time spent in the hospital, and but we made it through. So
And who was you had an unrelated
my
transplant?
brother
Your brother?
actually
Oh,
was
you're
my,
related.
yep,
Okay.
yep, was my donor.
Yeah.
So yeah, super amazing. Very thankful for him, and yep.
Does he live in Denver as well?
He doesn't. I'm actually originally from Idaho, and so a lot of my family's back there, and so they, were amazing and traveled here a lot to help us out with different things. And then, he of course traveled here to be able to um, do the transplant, and he actually came and lived with us for a little bit of time afterwards just to help. There's a lot of follow-up every other day appointments at the hospital after transplant, and the hospital is about a 35-minute drive for us from here, and so he was able to come and drive me every day, so
That's great.
yeah,
Huge
super
help.
thankful. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, often, people think, okay, they've gotten through the treatment, but really sometimes the hardest part is the being post, treatment,
Yeah.
where they have to go in for follow-up and checkups, and they're leaving their medical team behind at the hospital, and it's so challenging
Yep.
to go through the survivorship. How has that been for you?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of reached the point where I have a little bit of freedom, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We're about almost 2 years out from my transplant, and it's like I literally looked at my calendar the other day and thought, wow, I don't have any doctor's appointments scheduled right now, and it feels nice to get over that hump because, I think it's something you don't realize until you're really in it, that it is truly, every other day going to the hospital for, a long period of time, especially after that transplant. And, but everything, went well, and we made it through it. And again, that going back to people helping just during that time too was I was home. I was not in the hospital anymore, but so much of my day, a vast majority of it, was still spent driving to hospital, getting blood draws and infusions and things like that. And then by the time I got home, it's 6, 7 hours later. And so again, those meals and stuff that people were helping us out with was just incredible because even though I was home, there's a lot of stuff happening in the background that you can't necessarily focus on when you're still trying to heal and get better. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And how quickly did you start to exercise again and kind of work out and be around a lot of people like at your store, at your coffee?
Yeah. Yeah, we were very, very careful with germs and things like that. So being around big amounts of people, we took a while. I mean, 4 or 5 months before we really did anything like that, just because of being immunocompromised. So much of your risk with a bone marrow transplant is risk of infection, and so that took a bit. I was really fortunate that I'd say probably 3 months after my bone marrow transplant, I really started trying to I play beach volleyball, and I love it, and so I tried to kind of getting back into that a bit and just playing, being with friends, and feeling a little bit of normalcy. While I was in the hospital, I made a very big focus on walking as much as I could. You have a very small square that you can walk in there, but it was just laps, stay moving and stuff like that. So
I mean, exercise is so important. I so believe in that in terms of staying strong, and helping your recovery.
absolutely.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about your athletic beach ball, because I know you're a professional in terms of your.
Daniel calls me a professional, but excuse me.
She does play at the professional level. Sometimes there's professional tournaments that come here through Denver, but after her transplant, this is honestly the healthiest I've ever seen her, probably since high school when she was like playing, varsity basketball and volleyball and stuff like that. So I guess just for those who may be going through transplants themselves, just knowing that Mailie's an example of you can really bounce back in an incredible way, and even be better than you were before potentially.
Yeah, that's a great message to send out, because I know so many folks that I have worked with over the years, they think that their whole life is not ever going to be back to where they had once experienced it. And that doesn't always have to be the case, obviously, and you're a really great example of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, to get back to life and to, live again and not have fear around that. But
Yeah.
I'm sure there is probably some, because I know that a really common feeling often is just, always kind of when you're going through your checkups or so forth. And can you talk a little bit about just survivorship and that process? Because I know that that's, a hard process also too.
Yeah. Excuse me, got a little tickle in my throat. Yeah, I mean, there's always that fear, of is it going to come back sort of thing. We're both pretty optimistic, and I try not to focus on that too much, but I think it will always be there. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the bigger lessons and kind of how our lives have been shaped by the whole cancer and survivorship and things like that is just a slightly different outlook on life. I don't know that Mailie would be approaching beach volleyball the way she is right now with as much fervor and veracity without that, newfound appreciation for life and kind of how fickle it is, going through cancer and stuff like that. Because she was 29 when she was diagnosed, and I don't know that we take more risks necessarily, but I think we definitely say yes to a lot more in life, kind of have a better appreciation and gratitude for, the finitude and, the opportunities that were offered. So, I mean, you survive to, to live life. So we're doing our best to live life.
Yeah.
That's a great message for anybody, is to live life to its fullest. In regardless if you've had a life-threatening disease or not, because but often it takes, often people say that their cancer experience has really, given themselves just a different perspective on life and a different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but I do think that's really important, is that, you hope it doesn't take something life-altering like that. Sometimes it does, but just go out there and live your life.
No, definitely. And can you give advice on kind of couples? Because obviously you're a young couple with, a young child, and I know that can be really taxing and hard for a couple to go through this process together. And I'm sure that that's something that, is an important piece to share.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to realize that you're going to change and you're going to change together. Like I said, I think surviving something like this, people kind of change their outlooks on life. And, fortunately, we're very similar and changing in the similar mindset to each other, and learning and growing together and things like that. But just knowing that it's going to be different, but it's different, and you get to experience it together. So it's kind of fun in that sense, in a novel way.
Yeah. And
she didn't always have curly hair, for example.
Yeah.
So I get a new look. So
yeah.
Yeah, and I think just open communication. From the get-go, it was just talking to each other and really communicating, what we needed of each other and together to move through things. So
I'm sure it's made your relationship even more intimate and strong, because you've gone through something so huge together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for me, it helped me zoom out. When you live with someone, especially the small things can become, frustrating or difficult, and that's just part of being human together. But it's easier for me to zoom out and be grateful for what we have, and think, that may be frustrating, this argument we're having in this moment, but in the grand scheme of things, not too much of an impact.
Yeah, no, it's such an important message to put out there, and also just being. Does Piper know? Does she remember anything about being away from mom and dad or having other people around?
She's an elephant. She remembers
She
everything, I
remembers.
swear. But yeah, we talk about when mom was in the hospital or during COVID. She definitely remembers incessantly like sanitizing her hands and trying to stay healthy and things like that.
Mhm.
I think overall, she does remember it, but we just really worked together. I feel like we did a good job trying to keep that normalcy and, talking about it. It's one of those difficult things because she was 3 at the time, and it's like, how much do you share or not share? Because, there's the possibility that I don't make it through, and,
Mhm.
that's tough because you don't want to lie or deny that could happen, but at the same time, she's young, and it's finding that balance of like what is appropriate for her. And I felt like we did a good job with it and talking with her about the different scenarios and things like that, and she seems to have handled it okay, and we talk about it still. She'll bring it up sometimes, and it's okay.
Right.
So yeah.
Wow. And
Yeah.
and she probably became a little bit of a caregiver herself.
Yes,
With
she.
you.
I was just taking her to her friend's house, and on the ride over, told her we were doing this, and she said, "Yeah, remember when I used to bring you breakfast in bed? Me and Dad would bring you breakfast in bed," and that was a highlight always that she, enjoyed different things like that, but enjoyed it. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure she's going to be an amazing caregiver as an adult because of her experience with her mom and dad.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a lot for, a little one to go through, but, probably has made her super strong and also some independence too.
Yeah, absolutely. We always kind of say, grow through what you go through, and
Um,
it's just, you have to be in uncomfortable situations sometimes to grow and come out better on the other
yeah,
side of it. And that's what she's done. So
yeah,
it's good.
amazing. Well, I guess we're going to kind of wrap up, but it's been such a pleasure talking with you both. And just a little personal note is my one of my sons is moving to Denver, and I'm coming out there. He's moving. Actually, he's on his drive out there now from New York,
Oh, I love
and
it.
I'll be coming out there at the end of the month, end of September, to visit
Awesome.
him. And so we're gonna. I would love to get together with you both
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
meet you in the flesh, in person,
Yes.
and come to your coffee place
Yeah, absolutely.
and all of that. So I really look forward to that and connecting there when I'm there. So and I look forward to being in touch with both of you and continuing to, you know, share your insights and your story. Um, and um, and it's been really nice to meet you both and have you join us this evening to tell people, just to stay positive and that you can get through this tough time.
Thank you so much for having us. We are very happy to be here and, like we said, sharing kind of our story and what we've been through. And we're super thankful to you as well for the CancerBuddy app because it really has, put us in touch with people, and it's just such a awesome, unique gift to people to be able to connect and understand what other people are going through and things like that.
Well, I'm excited to grow Cancer Buddy and to help hopefully thousands and thousands of patients, caregivers, and survivors to have a community to stay connected with. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay, well, have a wonderful rest of your evening. It's earlier in Denver,
Yes.
and and I'll be in touch with you guys to set up a time that we can all get together in person when I'm there.
Perfect. Yeah.
Excellent. Love it.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, good night and thank you. And
Yep.
thank everybody for watching.
Thanks,
Bye.
Christy.
Bye.